Hey everybody, Spencer Hakimian, and welcome back to another episode of What's Moving Your Money. On today's episode, we're going to exclusively be covering the upcoming Jackson Hole Federal Reserve Symposium. It is Jerome Powell's last Jackson Hole as Fed Chair. We're going to get into what we can expect in terms of commentary, what we can look forward to in the September Fed meeting, and everything about the Fed that is going to happen between now and May of 2025 when the next Fed Chair is going to take his or her position. So sit back tight and I hope you enjoy. So this week we have the Jackson Hole Annual Symposium, and this is a rather important meeting every single year because this is a slower part of the year in terms of economic news, corporate news, political news, you name it. So the Fed takes this meeting as a chance to review long-term goals and long-term ideas rather than anything that is rather short-term, tweaking policy by 25 basis points up or down, adjusting balance sheet runoffs, things of that nature. This is a meeting where they get into much larger, big concepts ideas, thematic ideas, opinionated ideas, things that they do not really know for certain yet, but they're keeping an eye on. And that is why the market considers it a rather really interesting meeting. Not so much that it has an immediate impact on markets, but it gives us a lens into how the Fed members are thinking about things about the economy that they have not generally historically disclosed of prior to this meeting. So it is a really cool and interesting meeting, and I have some ideas as to what we can expect for this meeting. I think he is going to come out and warn against things like excessively negative real interest rates. I think he's going to come out and subtly warn against the political influence while setting monetary policy. I think Powell is also going to take this chance to take somewhat of a victory lap for everything that he has accomplished, him and his board, during his tenure as the Federal Reserve Chair. If you remember, Powell was appointed back in 2017. We've gone through a lot together. We went through the 2018 taper tantrum. We went through 2020 COVID. Who could forget that? We went through the explosive growth of 2021. We went through the explosive inflation of 2022. We went through the banking mini crisis of 2023. And now we've come into this 2025 period where we have excessive political pressure being placed on monetary policy makers, which is highly unusual in developed democracies such as the United States. I think ultimately, at this meeting, Powell is going to choose not to signal a rate cut during the September meeting. But given that, yes, it is about a 90% pricing in at the moment that we will get a rate cut at the September meeting. But I still think Powell will steer on the side of caution. We have just started to feel the impact of tariffs. Companies are raising their prices. If you go on my Twitter page, my Instagram page, my TikTok page, I put out a post today about how copper prices are rising in spite of the fact that Trump gave a reprieve to those copper producers so that they would not raise prices so much. Anyway, that's how corporations tend to go, so it is what it is. One interesting thing that I saw is that prediction markets, like Kalshi, like Polymarket, they show a 75% chance of a rate cut at the September meeting. But OIS swaps, overnight index swaps, professional markets that bond traders tend to use and futures traders tend to use are showing roughly a 90 to 95% chance of a rate cut. So let me know in the comments, which one do you guys think we're closer to a 90% chance of a rate cut or a 75% chance at a rate cut? If you remember last time at this year, this was the meeting that we went from a 25 basis rate cut priced in to within a minute, we priced in a 50 basis rate cut, and we ended up cutting by more than the street had expected back then. And ironically, it didn't even work back then and made the problems worse to an extent. So look, we have that coming up. And then one other thing for this video that I want to touch on is I want to talk about the presumptive possibilities for the next Fed chair, because I think it's very important that we get to know some of these people. And believe it or not, it's actually a very wide range of potential candidates. So let's start off with the current frontrunner. That is Christopher Waller. He is a current Fed member. He is pretty similar in his thinking to Jerome Powell, although currently speaking, he is a little bit more dovish, but everyone is assuming that that's because he wants the Fed job. He has not been such a dove during his tenure on the board, but I think he is really trying to impress the president by acting quite a lot more dovish than he really is. Call him what you want, call it unethical, call it whatever you want to say. That is what it is. Next, we have Kevin Warsh. And believe it or not, Kevin Warsh is somebody that was actually frontrunner to become the Fed chair back in 2017 when Trump had his first attempt to nominate a Fed chair. So this is somebody that is well vetted by the Trump administration. He is well respected amongst academic and professional circles, and he would be somewhat of an outsider pick that would still retain a good amount of credibility from the outside. Now, interestingly enough, Kevin Warsh has come out somewhat more hawkish than you would otherwise have expected for somebody auditioning for a role where their employer is such a clear dove on monetary policy and on interest rates. Now, was he doing that just to build credibility? Are these his sincere beliefs? Has he spoken privately to the Trump administration indicating what he's doing this for? These are all interesting questions, but I think they're worth thinking about. And again, as always, let me know what you think in the comments. Then we have Kevin Hassett as a potential choice. Now, in my opinion, this is likely the least serious of the potential nominees. He does not have extensive history in the private sector. His extent to participate in the government is revolving around tariffs. He does not have any significant notable distinctions and, citations in the economics industry. So it would be very interesting to see him pick Kevin Hassett. But of the bunch, Kevin Hassett is undoubtedly the biggest loyalist to Trump. So if Trump really wanted a loyalist, some might even call it a puppet, as Fed chair, Kevin Hassett would be the logical choice in that instance. And then the final potential nominee, which I found very fascinating, is Janet Yellen. Over the weekend, the Wall Street Journal reported that Janet Yellen is seriously being considered for Fed chair. Now, that would be a blast from the past. She obviously served as Barack Obama's Fed chair. She served as Joe Biden's Treasury Secretary. And this would be a very interesting move because in the event that he did nominate Janet Yellen, I think it would be very credibility building because Janet Yellen would obviously be from the other side of the political aisle. Needless to say, she is extensively more qualified academics-wise than any of the other nominees to be Fed chair. And it would be almost an olive branch from the Trump administration to the American public saying that we will keep monetary policy independent and we will honor our pact to have an independent Fed chair. So I guess this is all going to settle out over the next few months. We're going to be tracking it closely. And as always, I want to thank you guys for watching. And I look forward to seeing you guys again soon.